I see quite a few seemingly non-payroll trends that are actually flowing into payroll. For example, non-monetary benefits such as wellness activities really start to play a part in the payroll field. It's about the entire employee experience. Systems and applications even related to your self-service and your payroll, your pay slips is now relevant in terms of tools of communication and how you are requesting your documents, your salary letters, your master detail updates and those kind of things. So that for me is really a trend that I've seen. The non-monetary benefits that are actually really starting to play a part in the fuller picture of payroll benefits.
Welcome to the Payroll Podcast with your host, Nick Day. Find out what it takes to truly discover what it takes to elevate your career within payroll as we meet with the industry leaders who are shaping the industry for tomorrow.
Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. My name is Nick Day, CEO at JGA Recruitment Group, specialist payroll recruiters. Now, whether you're listening to this for the first time or the 50th time, please do take this opportunity to go and subscribe to the podcast, share it with all your payroll friends. Let's really get the message out there to improve the profile of payroll globally. And actually, as it happens, I have a global leader on the Payroll Podcast today. So on to my today's guest. Today, I'm joined by Diana Geldenhuys, who is based in the UAE and is CEO of both OPS, which is Outsourced Payroll Solutions, and gulfHR, both businesses that Diana has developed and grown after identifying a need for efficient and cost-effective services in both HR and payroll for the Middle East. Now, Diana is an expert in her field. She knows the complexities and the nuances of HR and payroll in the Middle East. In 2016, she won the Emirates Women Award in the business category in honor of her extraordinary professional and entrepreneurial achievements. And she is a leader and an entrepreneur that has mentored and grown international teams for more than 20 years, spanning industries and geography. So, Diana, welcome to the Payroll Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing excellent. Wow, what an introduction, Nick. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Great to have you on board. Of course, you pioneered HR technology in the Gulf in a time of crisis. You founded OPS in 2008, steering the business as the region's specialist in the payroll outsourcing market. You then had the opportunity to acquire gulfHR in 2011, which enabled you to interface technology and HR solutions to become a true global payroll and HR leader in the Middle East. However, your entrepreneurial journey started way back in 1996 when you established an educational supplies firm in South Africa. So rather than me tell the story, it would be great if you could just tell all our listeners a little bit more about your career journey, how you found yourself in global payroll, and more pertinently, I guess, how you became such a thought leader in the world of Middle Eastern payroll operations.
You take me back many years now. So when we came to the UAE in 1998, like normal expatriates for a 3-year stint, I started to work in the HR community. I became the HR manager, later in a more strategic position in HR in educational institutions in the Middle East. By about 2007, 2008, I realized that there is a need for payroll, and I decided to venture out on my own. Now, payroll at that time wasn't one of the prestigious kind of a careers. It was more a back office function. I guess to some extent, many people still view that. We started with a small office. We got our first couple of clients. We got partnerships with UK companies, and there you go. Payroll was born, a unique payroll outsourcing company. And then, of course, the economic downtime hit. Now, that was to our benefit because all of a sudden, companies needed external providers to do their payroll. As economic downtime, similar to what happened now recently, is negative for some. For companies like us in the outsourcing world, it actually really enhances the offering that we can give.
Sure. So tell me how that links then to, you obviously CEO of two major businesses, gulfHR being one, OPS the other. Are they run very separately, or do you manage to bring the platform, for example, on global HR into the business at OPS? Are they linked in any way?
Yes, very true. We have our HRMS software, the payroll part of it that we run our OPS payroll with. We are very excited to say, though, that we were able to create our own payroll software specifically for OPS in the beginning of 2021. So we are now gradually transforming all our clients into our unique OPS payroll software.
Fantastic. So for those listening to this who maybe are not so familiar with payroll in the Middle East, how does it differ from other regions? What are the intricacies or the unique elements of what makes the Middle East payroll so different or potentially so challenging?
I have to start by giving you a little bit of history of how salaries had been paid and how payroll had been done many years ago.
Great.
So up to just over a decade ago, a large part of the blue-collar workers were still paid out in cash. I remember how our payroll system had to download a report that had to be sent to the bank to request how many 5 dirhams, 10 dirhams, 100 dirhams had to be sent as a cash drop to make sure every employee gets his pay packet in the right denomination. Fast forward, so in 2009, this changed quite a bit when the wage protection system, or WPS as we locally know it, was introduced. It was firstly here in the UAE. UAE pioneers quite a bit of the advancement. Then Qatar, KSA, Oman, and the rest. This was to ensure workers and employees get their full dues on time. There was previously some problems with that. But not only that, it now had to be paid through banks and approved financial institutions. This was music to our ears in the payroll profession. And it was significant for us because it was a step forward in the payroll profession. We got more involved in the disbursement and the treasury part of the payroll process. This was really good for us and important because before salary payments, the last part of the payroll process was mainly a finance function. WPS helped us, and the winds of change started because the payroll now became an independent function and it became far more significant and obvious.
So prior to that, did companies have a payroll department, or was it all done by finance? And since that WPS was introduced, are we now seeing the emergence of specific payroll departments then more now than we did before?
Yeah, payroll was typically a function underneath finance. So it wasn't an independent payroll function. There were shared offices, shared services. Our hospitality industries had a shared services where, say, the Jumeirah Group had all the different hotels underneath there. But all along, it was second to the finance function. And it lately actually moved towards becoming an independent payroll function. I want to take a little bit more of a step back into the history of payroll, if I may.
Sure.
Back to what the payroll world looked like in the 90s. The lens now is on how we paid our professional expatriates. Those are people like you and I that came to the Middle East for a 3-year stint. I think people can recall at that time it was typically called a hardship zone, and we had to get allowances for that as well. It's hardly that anymore with all the beautiful restaurants and all the 5-star hotels that we have these days. So a payslip for an expat at that time looked a little bit like a cafeteria list. You had anything in there from a travel allowance, a housing allowance, a COLA, cost of living allowance, even beach club allowances, Nick, and then, of course, your basic salary. So it was not amiss to also have regular bonuses and lots of other perks at that time. You could choose if you wanted it to be split up in your home currency, a part to be sent there, dirhams, riyals, or whatever country you are currently in. And it was a good life at that time for an employee, but not for payroll. So when you ask me about payroll and why is it, or how is it different than other parts of the world, people typically see that payroll is not complicated in the Middle East, but there are so many different nuances and things that one has to account for that it actually, I want to agree to disagree. It is rather complex. If you think of things such as exchange rates that had to change all the time, pension calculations. It's differently calculated for GCC nationals working in other countries. So an Omani in Saudi is being paid different than a Bahraini in Saudi in terms of pension.
Sure.
There's social securities, there's gratuity. I'm not sure if the rest of the world talk about gratuity, or do they rather talk about pension?
It can be both depending on where you are. But I think the key thing is, even in the UK, if you're standard the UK payroll, every single payroll department in the UK is unique in itself, whether it's by your sector, by the frequency you process, by the deadlines, by the employee size. So I have no doubt at all that, to summarize a UAE payroll, for example, as being simple, I can imagine there is a huge number of complexities within that people don't consider, which you've just highlighted. For example, as as you say, an Omanian working in a different location is going to have different issues to a Bahrainian. So these are things that are certainly new to me, and I'm sure that there's some really challenging aspects that businesses would certainly overlook if they didn't have that expertise that you're able to offer.
Yeah, and that's why I think people like you, Barry, Matthews, we need to up the game of the payroll profession, because it really is quite complicated in all the different regions. As you rightfully said, there's even in the UK, different departments have different ways of how they calculate that. I mean, tax calculations in countries such as Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, we say we don't have tax calculations, but we do. It's hardly ever straightforward. It's
Sure.
The interpretation of the legal aspects is quite complex. And as you know, it comes out in Arabic. So we've got to translate from Arabic to English, and it requires some fancy footwork sometimes to advise people as to how a dispute would be, because it always reverts back to Arabic as an example.
What about on the payroll trend side of things? We've seen, if I referenced the likes of Singapore, we've seen it go from almost nothing to suddenly being one of the most technically advanced countries and cities in the world. Has that been the same with payroll as well? Because obviously, if you mentioned WPS then coming in, since then payroll's really come into the limelight. It's starting to find its feet as its own function. But often when you haven't got all the baggage that came before, like we have in the UK of centuries worth of payroll trying to establish itself, when you start from a later standpoint, actually you can often advance much quicker. You're not being held back by what went on before. So what are some of the emerging trends that you're seeing in the Middle East at the moment, and are they further ahead potentially than what we're seeing in the European market or even in the UK, or are they similar?
I listened to quite a few of your and other podcasts. I wouldn't say that we're ahead.
Okay.
I would say that it follows different tracks. We've got quite a bit of our internal challenges that we've got to face and adhere to. For example, a person working in one country and being transferred to another country but want to continue employment. There's those kind of things that we still are faced with. So when I think of payroll trends, and I really only think of maybe next year and what's going to happen, I see quite a few seemingly non-payroll trends that are actually flowing into payroll. For example, non-monetary benefits such as wellness activities really start to play a part in the payroll field. It's about the entire employee experience. Systems and applications even related to your self-service and your payroll, your pay slips, is now relevant in terms of tools of communication and how you are requesting your documents, your salary letters, your master detail updates and those kind of things. So that for me is really a trend that I've seen. The non-monetary benefits that are actually really starting to play a part in the fuller picture of payroll benefits. Another trend is as employers are offering more flexibility in terms of work hours and the place of work. Now, we all know what speeded up that part. Before, our mechanism here in the Middle East that we used was unpaid leave. We could only use unpaid leave if you wanted to be off work, and you couldn't utilize your vacation leave. Now, due to the huge impacts of the events in 2020, companies are offering more ways of how employees can be paid and structured in terms of their times, in terms of independent contracts, and that is actually quite beneficial for the employees.
Have you ever asked yourself, how can I recruit payroll staff effectively? Please don't give up on your recruitment project just yet. Here at JGA Payroll Recruitment, we appreciate the difficulties associated with attracting, recruiting and retaining top payroll talent. We also understand just how costly a poor payroll hire can be. JGA Recruitment are a niche payroll recruitment agency who will partner with you to resource payroll candidates who will improve both the accuracy and efficiency of your payroll department. Contact us today on 01727 800 377 or visit jgarecruitment.com to find out more.
That was actually where I was going to go, really, is have you found the pandemic over the last 12, 24 months, has that really changed some of these things that you mentioned? So is this one of the reasons that we're seeing more wellness type benefits being incorporated through the payroll, some of those work balance hours and working from home and things like that? Have you seen those changes happen in the Middle East as a result of the pandemic, or were those things starting to happen anyway?
I would say as a result of the pandemic. Sure. And absolutely, I could see the change, and I could see the change for the good and for the better. Employees are flexible even in the intervals of salaries that they are paying. You know, before they paid on a monthly basis. If you wanted a salary advance, it was a huge process to get that. Now the payroll and employees are more flexible in terms of getting salaries for lesser periods of a month. I would like 10 days of my salary. It's still in the emerging phases, but that's such a good thing that it gives employees a complete flexibility and autonomy in how they want to be paid. So that's another really nice trend that I can see evolving.
Certainly in the UK, I think the pandemic has really raised the profile of payroll. I think people have seen that payroll departments have been, that those key workers that have had to continue to make sure payroll is run correctly. They've been negotiating 30 plus changes to furlough legislation. But of course, there are key line workers, whether you're in the NHS or elsewhere, they need to be paid in order to continue to work. So it's had a real impact on the way that payroll is being perceived here in the UK and further afield. Have you felt that the role of payroll professionals then in the Middle East has also changed the way that payroll is perceived where you are as well? Has the profile been raised as a result of the last 12, 24 months worth of challenging circumstances it's found itself in?
It's getting there. I wish I could say it was faster, but it is getting there. And each one of us need to do our bit, So we internally have decided that we need to create a payroll community. We have done that where we offer payroll training, we bring the people together, we connect them, we grow them, we find ways that they can actually learn from each other. So we're quite excited about this new concept that we're going to launch in a couple of weeks from now. At this point in time, a not-for-profit, it is really to bring the payroll community together and to say we have to raise the bar of payroll.
What I love is it sounds like unilaterally across the globe, everyone's trying to do a little bit to just raise the profile. You mentioned Barry Matthews there earlier, but I know this is happening across the globe. You're obviously doing it in the Middle East as well. I think if we all do this collectively at the same time, it'll all slowly start to have a real global impact on how payroll is perceived, which I think is absolutely fantastic for the industry as a whole. And it's great to see so many leaders like yourself, Diana, really putting so much passion and energy into helping raise the profile of payroll, which I think is just excellent. I love hearing those stories. Going forward then for the Middle East, what are the key priorities that you're going to be focusing on, both as an entrepreneur, as CEO, of course, of OPS? What are the key priorities going forward for Middle Eastern payroll?
So we've got a really exciting, admittedly demanding roadmap ahead of us in the next 18 months. And firstly, it's forever about the client experience. We recently had a client feedback that they said they're not used to a personalized payroll experience, and they found that to be so fresh, and they appreciated that. And knowing that they can't be experts in the Middle East, so to have someone pick up the phone and say, how can we help you holistically? What payroll problem and other problems can we help you solve? So that's been a focus, and that is we've got an actual strategy plan that we're going to execute over the next 6 months for this. We map out custom payroll processes for each client. We configure workflow. Those kind of things is what we want to do to make sure that it is unique to everyone. digitization and automation. We can't have a conversation without tech, can we?
Sure, no.
So we recently introduced what we call EVDS. Clients no longer have to send emails or save spreadsheets on SharePoint or Google Drive or wherever. We now have a single source of truth where data is integrated with their master system, or the clients themselves have access to load the data once, ready for approval. That whole audit trail kind of process is being eliminated. There's not many sources of truth. We're quite excited about that, and the pilots that we've done has been met with quite a lot of success. I mentioned the payroll community. You know, people really want to learn. They want to know more. They're hungry to learn. We've off our own bat created a fundamentals in payroll training for the Middle East, specifically for the Middle East, that we've put on a learning management system platform. We want this to go viral. We don't want to charge for it. We want to say, this is what we can offer for you to learn more about payroll. We want to have curated content. You know, I know not that many people in the payroll profession that, for example, listen to your podcasts, and it's invaluable just to get an idea of what's happening in the wider world out there. So these are the kind of things that we want to bring in to improve professionalism of payroll overall for us here. UAE, Saudi, you know, there's 121,000 payroll professionals that I saw on LinkedIn. Wow. With the name payroll in their name on LinkedIn. So there's a huge field, untapped field that we can actually work towards becoming more professional.
That's an amazing statistic, and it's really commendable that we're doing more, again, to raise the profile through learning and through education. It's fantastic, some of the work that I've seen you doing, which is why I was so delighted to have you on the podcast today. Something that I really enjoyed, actually, Diana, reading on your website, which is the OPS Outsourced Payroll Solutions website, and I will put a link to that in the episode notes for those listening to this that want to find out more about the services you provide. But you put on your website that payroll is a monster on the best of days. Lucky for you, we like a challenge. It'd be great if you could tell us a little bit more about the business services that actually OPS do provide within the Middle East. And if you can just sort of, if there is someone listening to this, maybe they've got a large Middle East employee presence, maybe it's just one or two employees. If they're not quite sure where to get started, or perhaps they're considering outsourcing that aspect of the payroll, what are some of the services that OPS do provide?
Yes. So firstly, payroll has to be fun. And this is why we actually made it a little bit tongue in the cheek. But apart from having a personality and being fun, we are quite serious about payroll. That's the only thing that we do. We are payroll experts and payroll professionals in the whole of the Middle East. We do payroll mapping from the beginning. We, for new clients that come on board, we do payroll policies. We make sure that they are compliant to the whole of the Middle East. A number of our clients have offices in the different GCC countries. So apart from making sure that we have the employment contracts and so is compliant to all the legislation, we do payroll audits, we do payroll training, anything with the name payroll in front of their name, except payroll merchandise. We're not there yet. We do for the whole of the Middle East.
Fantastic. So last question before we open the vault really is for a business that's considering maybe outsourcing, at what point does it become, in your view, an attractive proposition to outsource that sort of element of your payroll? You know, at what point commercially, you know, if I was a business with just one employee, would you still recommend that I came to someone like yourself to help me, or does it get to a certain point where you go, actually, it's at this point that this is when you should really start considering whether or not you want to keep that in-house, or whether outsourcing might actually be the better solution?
So you know that when you start up a company in the Middle East, you have very little knowledge of any of that legislation. So a number of our clients are those that start up that are 3, 4, 5 employees and grow, that said, can you do the full payroll function for me? Can you have your payroll system give me access to it, that I'm sitting somewhere in where my head office is and I can actually view my reports and the like. Right to our largest client size is in the region of about 750 employees that are here that are wanting to do the payroll in the proper way.
Sure.
So it really ranges. I would say larger than that is not really the OPS experience, because we prefer the individualized, custom, bespoke kind of a experience. We don't go and say we do payroll for 10,000 employees. That's more a matter of an HRMS that we provide gulfHR for them, and we also help them to source payroll, or we try to get people like you in to source the right payroll candidates for them to run payroll.
I think that's great. It's a very honest response. And as you mentioned, you've got gulfHR as well to help businesses with the HR side of things through the platforming there as well. I will put a link as well to gulfHR also in the episode notes. So I'm going to very quickly open the vault down, if I may.
Entering the vault.
One piece of advice you would give to someone working in payroll right now?
Be curious. We tend to want to do payroll in the same way, and with analytics, with giving insights back to our clients, we've got to stay curious.
Love that. If you had the power of foresight and you could change the entire payroll industry with one action or improvement, what would that global action or improvement be?
Oh, what an interesting question. There's 100 things that pop in my mind. I go back to technology from the beginning. We don't understand in the payroll world how much tech can support us. So we revert many a times back to our Excel sheets, and payroll technology with machine learning and with all that kind of thing will demand a new type of payroll expert. And that would be my advice, that we from the beginning work with payroll technology to aid and support us.
Fantastic. And last question, Levant, what's the one thing that you think needs to happen for the global payroll profile to really increase as we move into the year 21-22? We're in it now. So over the next 5 years, if you want to raise that profile, what's the one thing you really think needs to happen for that to occur?
Training, certification, qualifications. I would love to have a degree in payroll, and have it here in the Middle East.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Of course, if anyone wants to find out more about the services you provide, you do, OPS, of course, offer a wide spectrum of integrated payroll solutions and services. The website is ops.ae, but I will put a link to that website in the episode notes as well. So just click straight through to the episode notes so you can get that link. But also, of course, you also provide robust and powerful payroll and HR platform, which is built specifically for the Middle East, which you can find at gulfhr.ae. Are there any other links you'd like me to share, or any places perhaps people can find yourself, Diana, if people want to connect with you directly?
We'd like to share the training link to you. And
please do.
If there are people that are in the UK or the rest of the world that want to have an introduction in fundamentals of payroll in the Middle East, we'd love you to do that.
It'd be my absolute delight to share that. Anything that helps improve the skill set of the payroll professional. And as you say, it's completely free. We want that to go viral. So hopefully the Payroll Podcast can make that happen as well. So please do send me the link. I'll make sure that's also made available in the episode notes as well. So if you want to learn about Middle Eastern payroll, you can do that free of charge by following that link in our episode notes. So please do check that out. And of course, if you are a payroll leader listening to this podcast and you have a payroll related vacancy that you need some support with, please do get in touch with myself. I'd love to show you what a great payroll recruitment experience can feel like. You can get me at nick@jjarecruitment.com, or give me or any of my wonderful team a call on 01727 800 377, or visit our website, jjarecruitment.com. My last thing I wanted to say, Diana, is thank you ever so much for joining me today on the Payroll Podcast. It's been a brilliant whistle-stop tour about all things Middle East payroll, which is fantastic. It's new to the Payroll Podcast, and it's been an absolute delight of mine to be able to welcome you to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Same here. Have a nice day.
Thanks for listening, folks. I look forward to bringing you the next episode of the Payroll Podcast real soon.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Payroll Podcast with Nick Day of JGA Recruitment. If you need help with a current payroll vacancy, then please get in touch with Nick and his team. All contact details can be found in the episode notes. In the meantime, to make sure you never miss a future episode, please subscribe to the show through any of your favorite podcast channels. Till next time.